And that's where it all began for Jeremiah. There were times when Jeremiah felt that God had tricked him, had taken hold of him. He wanted to escape, but again and again, that fire returned. I want to just tell you a bit about the story of Jeremiah, because the book of Jeremiah is unlike some of the books of the prophets in that it does tell his story. It gives us a picture of the person behind the words. And so Jeremiah's story is almost as important as the words he gives. Jeremiah was part of a priestly family living in Jerusalem in, as I say, the 7th century before Christ. And as we've heard, as a young man, he experienced this vivid encounter with God and call to be a prophet. It was the beginning of a long and difficult task as he warned the people about the wrongs in society and the disaster that was coming. He lived in a very turbulent time. You had the great Assyrian Empire. You would think of this little nation of Israel and Judah and these great big empires that could destroy a small nation at the whim of a king. You had the Assyrian Empire attacking and pressing home, and that was part of the scene. And then later the Babylonian Empire would appear. The next slide. Jeremiah spoke out against injustice and corruption, dishonesty and greed, leaders who serve themselves rather than the people, the bad shepherds, as he called them. He warned against complacency and spiritual blindness, forgetting God, breaking God's commandments, lack of care for the poor and the vulnerable. Now, you hear the echoes with our own society and our own world today. And again, Jeremiah would urge the people to come back to God, the God who was always faithful for them. He wrote, "The Lord says, return to me, you people who have turned away. Remember that you belong to me." And to illustrate his message, he took a pot. I know this is a precious pot for Trinity, so I'm not going to cast it down and break it as Jeremiah did. He said the nation is like a pot that has been crafted beautifully by God, and yet God's seen an imperfection in it. It's wrong, it's gone wrong. God is going to cast it down, and then God will remold a new and beautiful pot for his purpose. Clay in God's hands. It's a frightening image in some ways, and yet also an assuring one that God does recreate and make new. He said, the next slide, yes, my people are broken, shattered. And the leaders, this is the Message version, put on sticking plasters, saying, it's not so bad, you'll be just fine. But things are not just fine. Or as the New International Version puts it, they dress the wound of my people as though it was not serious. Peace, peace, they say, when there is no peace. People would say, well, no, the climate this isn't a problem, it will be fine. There's a real climate crisis we need to address. People say, oh yes, things will all settle down. There's a real conflict within our world that needs to be addressed. There is no peace. Jeremiah found giving that message very demanding. He at times hated being a prophet. He longed for a quieter life. The next slide. And yet, constantly this message of God would kind of stir up, this Spirit of God would stir up in him again. When he tried to just step back and not speak this challenging message, God would stir up the fire within him. And he was persecuted for the message. He was treated and regarded as a traitor because he was saying that, yeah, disaster is going to happen. Invasion will happen. He was treated as a defeatist. And there were other prophets who were saying, no, it's all going to be fine. God will look after us. Don't worry. But Jeremiah constantly came back to that message. And the next slide. All I get for my God warnings are insults and contempt. But if I say, forget it, no more God messages from me, the words are far in my belly, a burning in my bones. I'm worn out trying to hold it in. I can't do it any longer. This compulsion to share the message of God. Well, the next slide, the people and the leaders didn't change. They turned their anger on Jeremiah. You know, if the message is bad, blame the messenger. And so Jeremiah was thrown into prison and then lowered into this cistern, this dry well. It wasn't totally dry, it was mud, and he sank into the mire. It was a pretty dreadful time for Jeremiah. But his warning did come true. In 597, Jerusalem was captured by the Babylonian Empire. The Assyrian Empire had been defeated by the Babylonians. And then the army, Babylon demanded tribute from the nation of Judah, and for a few years they did that, but then they thought, no, we can be all right, and so they stopped paying the tribute, and the Babylonians came and destroyed the city and the temple and took the leaders into exile in Babylon. 587. The temple was destroyed, and Jeremiah wept over his people. The book of Lamentations that follows Jeremiah traditionally has been linked with Jeremiah, though it was probably written by other writers. But it has these words, "My eyes are worn out with weeping, my soul is in anguish." It was the hardest time for the people of Israel, the Jewish people of that time. Total defeat. There seemed to be no way that nation could ever be reborn. And the next slide, Jeremiah was taken against his will to Egypt, and from there he wrote to the people. He wrote to the people in Babylon who'd been taken into exile. And he told them, get used to it. It's not going to change soon. There's going to be this exile for 70 years or so. So make friends with the Babylonians. Settle there. But eventually God will bring you home. And so alongside that message of weeping, there is a message of hope. Because as disaster came, then Jeremiah could start to think beyond that disaster to the future. And he becomes a prophet of great hope. We'll turn to that hope in a moment. But it's very moving when he he writes to the people and says, yes, it will be a long time, but God will bring you home. There will be a new beginning for the people. God will bring forgiveness